dear people, let's give your attention to Michel Scholte.
It's an amazing pleasure to stand in front of you today. My name is Michel Scholte and I'm the co-founder and director of TruePrice, a social enterprise. And I will talk to you about the problem of true costs, about the solution of true prices, and also the emergence of true profits, a third concept which is very relevant, I would say, for finance and a sustainable financial system. So first of all, the problem of true costs. My mother, being a single mom of 3 children and a self-made freelance journalist, didn't have a lot of money. And one day I asked her, "Mom, why are we poor?" And my mother said to me, "We are not poor. Why don't you travel the world and see the world and really experience what poverty is?" And I did so, and I actually saw people who were absolutely poor, who didn't have drinking water, who actually were farmer communities contributing to the chocolate bars in the stores, but actually didn't get enough to get by, didn't get the price that they deserve for their hard work. I was so shocked by this that I wanted to save money to help them. I raised money, had 16,500 euros with my high school to help these farmers, and I was proud that I could provide them with the means to, well, at least give them the water. But when I went to university and studied sociology, I understood that it was not a coincidence that these farmer communities were poor, that this was actually an outcome of a system, a sinister system, a trade system that assures that they will stick in poverty, in poor conditions for generations to come, a legacy of the colonial past. If they would export chocolate bars, they would have to pay more than exporting commodities, raw beans, which obviously are hard to differentiate, are hard to brand, are hard to get revenue from or profit from. And in fact, the chocolate that they produce are shipped to Amsterdam, the largest cocoa harbor in the world, and then to Belgium to make the arguably best chocolate in the world. And then there's billions made out of that. Barry Callebaut, Nestlé, Verkade, the big brands, and these farmers, they stay in poverty. And this was for me unacceptable, and I was really shocked. And I embarked on the journey, and I was part of a think tank. And somehow the idea of externalities, which brought Nobel Prize winners, which is really one of the only things that all economists agree on, is kind of something that is really unacceptable, that we externalize social environmental costs and do not include it in the price. This was something that for me was my life mission. I wanted to go on this endeavor, and we started with the methodology, the first method in the world that would systematically map the social environmental cost, compensation cost, prevention cost, remediation cost, what are the projects needed, and what is then the invoice to a product. And one day I got an email from the chocolate company, a person working there, Tony Chocolonely. There was still a small red bar in the store, and the supply chain person said to me, "I don't really get what you work on, but it sounds that you can actually quantify the poverty, and we want to go towards slave-free chocolate." And we added much more to their challenge, because we said it's not just enslavement, it's also underpayment, under-earning, forms of child labor, but also on the environmental side, emissions of carbon in the transport by boat, the pollution of water, air, and soil, the extraction of scarce water, and many other things, biodiversity loss, amongst others. And basically, the true costs are the underlying driver of the lack of sustainability, and also probably the challenge that underlies the Sustainable Development Goals in 2030. And here you see a chocolate bar on the left that would retail for, and this is 2018, €3.20. It's a premium bar, very delicious. They're now, by the way, the largest chocolate brand in the Netherlands, and also expanding rapidly globally with this story. Here you can see that there's still social and environmental costs. What do you think is the true cost for this bar if you would add it to the €3.19 in the retail? €3.90. Raise your hand if you think we need to add 10 more cents or more, so more than 10 cents. Raise your hand if you think we need to add more than 10 cents. I would expect a lot of hands, right? There's a lot of trouble in these value chains. Who think it's more than 20 cents? Raise your hand. More than 30 cents? Raise your hand. More than 50 cents additional? Raise your hand a bit higher. More than €1 additional to the retail price. €2, €3. And think of what can drive this gap. I talked about the underpayment, the under-earning of these farmers. The actual true price is 86 cents. So we end up a bit more than €4 for this chocolate bar, which is an illustration of these societal costs that I told you about. So here you see the different cost categories. I already stressed this. In gray, you see the market price. In blue, the environmental, and in orange, the social costs. So this is a true price, and everything we buy has a true price. And because we don't pay for the true price, whatever the beautiful words, the PowerPoints, the SDG concepts are, we won't get there. We won't have a sustainable economy because we constantly externalize societal costs. So true prices are necessary for a sustainable economy. Here you see the €4.05. And by the way, what's interesting is that it's both in, there's a gray bar on top of the brown bar. It's both the cocoa as well as the milk, because it's a milk bar that's brought from Europe into that product, which obviously leads to methane emissions, but also nitrogen, which then leads to, monocultural biodiversity, or kind of non-biodiversity, and is very bad as well for nature. We also made calculations for the United Nations, and here you see that there's a 200% addition to the global food production and consumption if you would account for all the social and environmental costs. That includes health costs. Obesity, fatty, sugary, salty food lead to unhealthy people and therefore health costs, which is also very expensive. So 200% only for food should be added to, societal costs. So basically everything we generate in economic value is destroyed by 2. That is how significant this challenge is. The solution to this, true prices. Here you see the movement we started in 2018 in Amsterdam. We worked already a decade in 2018 on this challenge, and we noticed that it became a little bit academic. But the real stores, the places where consumption is generated, they didn't really join the party. And we decided to start our own store, the TruePrice store in the heart of Amsterdam. And before we knew it, the CEO of the chocolate company that became my friend, he said, here's 1,000 bars, put them in your store and sell them and see what happens. And everyone that entered the door was willing, even tourists that were drunk, weren't interested in sustainability at all, were just, seeking some sugar to overcome their stonedness. They would even pay for a true price because we were enthusiastic about it. Marketeers considered we were crazy. Businessmen thought it's communism because we dictate prices. But this was something that worked. And we moved on to a supermarket in the pipe, and we have more than 100,000 transactions with true prices. Here you can see for bananas, cauliflowers, broccoli, and carrots, the true price with a breakdown. And instead of clients moving out of the store because things become more expensive, we saw a 5% increase of sales after we introduced true prices. So it's something that's possible. And what we do, we gather the additional payments and we use that for remediation. So with farmers, we work on restoration projects to, kind of compensate, restore, and prevent the societal costs in the future. We now have dozens of purchase points in the Netherlands. Obviously, we are desperate to enter the Belgian market. Maybe in Tomorrowland there's coffee sold, and we can introduce the true price of coffee just to show it. And we now have the largest supermarket in the Netherlands that has 40% market share in the Netherlands joining the TruePrice movement. And we saw actually a voluntary payment, so we don't necessarily make it a default payment. You can also introduce it as a voluntary payment, and we saw almost 20% of the consumers willing to pay for voluntarily the TruePrice. And this is not a sustainability store. It's, you know, a typical mainstream retailer that joined the party. And a final and very interesting development is that the Ministry of Education, it's so recent that I didn't include it in the overview, the Ministry of Education has incorporated true pricing as a exam subject for high school economics students. So now it will become part of history, and the future entrepreneurs, the future consumers, they will make true pricing the new normal. So this is really something that is hitting off. Finance also obviously includes profits, what you kind of net. And unfortunately, we see that the pursuit of profits is predominantly what markets are creating as an outcome. And how to kind of incorporate those social environmental costs into that ruthless world. That's the question that we are also embarking on. And we basically developed the concept of a true profit, and it's on basically two-step extension of the conventional way of accounting for profits or impact. You not just look at your shareholder financial value, but also for value of, for example, suppliers, smallholder farmers. What is the income that they generate? What's their financial income? And secondly, we extend that to social, environmental, human, intellectual, and produced capital. So deepen and broaden the concept of value. And we have applied that all over the world. We work almost in every continent with the largest financial institutions, but also social enterprises. This is a bank in Amsterdam, ABN AMRO Bank, where we looked into the biodiversity impact. And again, you can use the information on what's the societal cost. And here you see a comparison between 2021 and 2020. And here you see that there's an actual improvement of 70 million euros of biodiversity. Well, you know, less of damage in a way. So less compensation, restoration, and prevention costs. And this is a way to really make it tangible and concrete for investors and for the finance community. And well, with regulation, you can actually drive a more sustainable financial sector. I've talked about this. Final point is that basically what you see is that already existing conventions on human rights, on climate, on biodiversity, they're already existing. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. They are now more and more internalized into business decision making, into market decisions. Consumers get a language and get data to incorporate it into their day-to-day decisions. And that is, I would say, the trend that we see all across Europe and that we see in Belgium as well. Here you see an example of all over the world emission trading systems for carbon, paying for the carbon that you emit. It's almost invisible. And in tomorrow's economy, you have to pay for it. And that creates an incentive to have low carbon products. We see also human rights being more and more incorporated into markets. And ultimately what you then get, and this is the final overview, is that you see that we move from an extractive economy in which human, natural, and social value is taken and turned into the gray financial value, into a more regenerative economy in which social, human, and natural value is enhanced, the pie is becoming bigger, and financial value is used to foster this. That is the economy that we strive for, and that's the economy that you are part of. Thank you so much, Tomorrowland, and let's have this discussion on how we can make this bigger. Thank you so much.
Michel, I have the same question for you. Now imagine you could choose the next newspaper headline that will make TruePrice or impact economy stand out in the news. What would it be?
I would say school books all over the world on economics classes incorporate TruePrice.
All right, thank you very much, Michel. Now,